a worse disaster in, Egypt or Mexico, but it's a disaster in the United States too. People are angry about it, upset about it. They haven't had a voice in the political system, or certainly not in the media, and maybe a few marginal people. And now there's an active, engaged, popular movement that's beginning to express those concerns and might go on. We'll see. It'll obviously meet a strong backlash of repression. That's predictable. If it can withstand it and overcome it, could be of historic significance.
Well, you mentioned growth, and that's another term that has a terrific ring to it. I mean, what could be bad about growth? We don't challenge the notion that growth is good, but are we breeding and consuming our way to extinction, and what's it going to take for us to recalibrate our expectations in a finite world?
Well, first of all, again, we should be careful to think about consumerism and the consumption culture. That's to a large extent artificially created, and not my opinion. You go back to the, say, a century, to the origins of the public relations industry, including the advertising industry. It's an interesting history. Back around a century ago, in the freest countries in the world, England and the United States, there was a recognition, conscious, articulated recognition on elite sectors, that enough freedom has been won by popular struggle so that people can't be controlled by force anymore. So there have to be other ways to control them. And the other way to control them is control of attitudes and opinions. That's when you get the call for manufacture of consent on the part of progressive intellectuals, the Wilsonian, Roosevelt progressives, and so on. We have to have manufacture of consent, but we also have to have creation of wants. People have to be driven to the more superficial things of life, like fashionable consumption. Actually, I'm quoting from the business press, because that way we can control people. If we can fabricate wants, that's the term used by the great political economist Thorstein Veblen, who understood this and wrote about it. If we can fabricate wants, create wants, we can trap people. We can trap people into consumerism, debt, and so on. And it's very interesting the way this was done. If there was time, I could go into it. So to a large extent, we live in a culture which, in a society in which enormous resources are devoted to fabricating wants. I mean, if you take a look at, I presume it's the same here as in the United States, if you look at a television directed to infants, 2-year-olds, it's already trying to create a culture of demand goods. In fact, there's now an academic discipline, part of applied psychology, which is concerned with nagging, literally. The reason is the advertising industry recognized a couple of decades ago that there's a big part of the population that doesn't have any money, so they can't buy, so we got to do something to make them buy. And the way that's children, and the way they can buy is by nagging their parents. So it's, I got to have that video cam, whatever it is. And so the advertising aimed at children